Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. This has been going on for all 18 years that I've been alive. It was happening before I even existed as well. Some of the stuff in here feels like stuff Reddit would absolutely love, so I thought I'd finally share it somewhere. Here's a list of some of the things my entitled grandmother, father's mother, has done since I was born. Basically asked for joint custody of me. I'm not kidding. When I was an infant toddler, she seriously asked my parents if I could spend 2-3 days at her house weekly, and then every other weekend spend the entire weekend sleeping over at her house as well. Also, she thought my mom breastfeeding me was hogging me. Didn't like the clothes my mother bought for me, so she would buy clothes herself, cut tags off and wash them, and hide them in my closet, in my house. She would also do this if she didn't like stuff my parents owned. She'd go out and buy stuff and just stick it in our kitchen drawers. When my mom started making an effort to get us out of the house more so she couldn't randomly stop by to visit so often, she started spying on the calendar we had in our house and then would instead randomly stop by at events we'd be out at. When I was a bit older but still needed babysitting for the summer, she'd come over still in pajamas claiming she hadn't had time to get ready, so then I'd have to go spend the day at her house instead so she could get dressed. Luckily, this stopped when poor innocent me went, "Actually, Grandma, I'm allowed to stay home alone now, so you just go get dressed, and I'll wait here." I've been the artist of the family since I was a kid. She'd constantly ask me to draw her stuff, but then if she didn't like what I drew, she'd try to jokingly steal another drawing that I'd have made for myself instead. This never went well. When I was like 13 and she was over, she proceeded to say, "Baby cakes, come sit on my lap," where she was on the couch. Again, I was 13 and was way beyond the age of sitting on people's lap. She thinks my mother brainwashed me into hating her, but what actually happened was Kid Me started noticing how weird she acted compared to my other grandma, and when I asked my mother about it, my mother basically said, "Yeah, she's crazy," and I had no trouble believing her. Ongoing issues now. I can't tell her about anything I'm remotely interested in because she'll latch onto it and try to use it as some way to get me to spend more time with her. Most of you would probably think, why not just spend time with her? But after everything else on this list, I honestly just don't like being around her a lot. One of the reasons she got a phone was for the purpose of texting me in particular, and to this day is still pouty that it didn't work in getting me to talk to her more. Also, when I didn't reply to her weird texts, she'd call up my father and whine to him about how I never talked to her, and then he'd get mad at me over it. This also never went well. She is the reason why I hate all of the pet names, baby, baby cakes, babes, my sweet, sweetie, etc. Because to this day, me now being 18, she is the only person in my whole family who calls me these names, and it feels like I'm treated like a child. Her newest scheme is that she thinks if she can get me alone with her, my mother won't be able to brainwash me into hating her, and has yet to realize somehow that it has nothing to do with my mother at all and everything to do with how I myself don't actually want to be alone with her. 28 female, have a grandmother, 91 female, that have the worst relationship. She's emotionally abusive, has done favoritism to kids, grandchildren, and great-grandkids, and verbally abused me. And I can keep on going, but trust me, I wouldn't finish. I cut her off and pretend she doesn't exist after she was glad that my older brother, 25 at the time of his passing in 2014, and when I delivered my dead baby, she said she was pleased that happened to me. After that, at every family event or family reunion, I would pretend she doesn't exist. She tried to get her favorite grandchildren, my cousin's 33 female, 30 male, and 26 female, and younger brother, 23 male, to try to convince me to talk to her or say hi to her. We're Puerto Rican and unfortunately we're taught to respect our elders. But I didn't care, she's tried everything in. Her book and nothing work. In 2021, my dad got a call from his sister, 52 female Grandma's favorite daughter, and told him that Grandma was sick and wanted every child and grandchild to take care of her since she couldn't do it alone. I refused, saying I had college classes and work and I wasn't going to be doing it, since knowing her she would abuse me verbally. What I didn't know is that I was on speaker and Grandma started crying because I disrespected her. She got her favorite grandchildren to try to convince me to take care of her, but I told them off. So, a month ago, I graduated from college with my associate degree, and one of my aunts organized a BBK for the ones who graduated and birthdays in May. She was invited to the BBQ, but I didn't let that get the best of me. We were all having a good time until it was time to do a cheer and congratulations for birthdays and graduations. One of my aunts said in her cheer that after 20 years they have another magna cum laude graduate, and that she's proud of me for never giving up. Everyone was proud until my grandmother screamed to please respect the ones that didn't graduate magna cum laude. Like my aunt said I was the only one while the other ones were recent high school graduates, or please respect the ones that didn't go to college to waste their time. My younger brother didn't go. I kept a cool and calm head, and I called her out for everything that she was mad that youngest favorite granddaughter didn't graduate magna cum laude, how she loves to defend abusers. My younger brother has domestic violence history, and how I was done being the verbal punching bag, and much more. My grandmother, favorite daughter, and grandchildren left, and the party kept on going. I come to my apartment to see multiple messages to apologize to Grandma because she felt offended for what I did, but they're blocked, including my brother. Other family members are on my side since they all had to endure my grandma's verbal abuse. So, yeah, I keep clapping back at her. Karen and Ken are wealthy and extremely stingy. Their kid is Bob. Henry is an extremely sweet, generous single dad who lost his husband a few years ago and dotes on his kid Steve. I have been a nanny for several years now, and for the most part I've worked with lovely, reasonable families. I have contracts for every family that guarantees the hours that I work, meaning if a family goes on vacation, I still get paid because I'm technically available to work, but they chose not to use my services. Think gym membership, where you pay regardless of whether you've been to the gym in a month. This is standard on nanny contracts. Another bit on my contract is called the nanny share. So if two of the families want to combine for the day, each of them pays 2-3 of my regular pay rate. I get paid a little more for watching more kids, and they save a little only paying a portion of what they would have paid. Karen and Ken's family went to Hawaii 3 weeks ago, and per my contract, I was to be paid as usual. Before they left, they asked if I could come in and watch the Bob the Sunday after they returned so that they could recover and rest. I agreed, and my hours were set at 8 a.m., 4 p.m. that Sunday. They went on the trip. Everything was wonderful, and they texted me when they landed saying they would see me at 8 a.m. The next day, when I was about to head out the door at 7:30 a.m., I received a text saying that Bob were just waking up, so I should just show up at 8:30 instead. After the day of nannying, Karen asked if I would stay past my regular hours during the upcoming week so that they could have 2 date nights. I agreed, and Karen said she would reimburse me for all the extra hours at the end of the week since it'd be easier just to make one payment. Totally fine with me. The week finished, and I ended up staying an extra 8 hours total for the 2 date nights. I asked Ken to pay me for 16 hours, but he said he had to talk to Karen first to double-check hours and would pay me shortly. When I got home, I received a text from Karen saying, "Hi, Meowsasaurus. Thank you so much for covering for us these past few weeks." Ken and I are feeling refreshed, and the show was hilarious. Since we were in Hawaii, you were paid for an entire week while you weren't working. We don't think this is quite fair, as it is a large sum of money, so we'd like to apply some of those hours to your babysitting today and yesterday. We will pay you for 8 hours instead. I was furious. I screenshotted the part of my contract that plainly stated I would be paid for any hours that their family was on vacation, and I reminded her that it was in violation of contract. She reluctantly agreed, and I texted that it would be a total of 16 hours. Karen instantly replied and went off texting on Sunday. "We asked you to come in at 8:30, not 8. We are already being generous and paying you for the holiday we took. We expect you to track your hours better next time. This is unacceptable. You need to be as accurate as possible with hours that we are paying you. We will pay you for 15.5 hours. Readers, this was a difference of $12.50. I was going to assist the part of my contract that said any rescheduling needed a 24-hour notice, but instead I went nuclear. Bob has been tagging along with Steve and me to music class and soccer twice a week outside of Karen's regular contracted hours since January. Karen has never offered to pay for those hours, but Henry was fine with paying his full rate for those hours because Steve was having trouble making friends at school and had become close to Bob. I chose not to say anything about the slight bump in pay because I loved watching them play together. Malicious compliance time. As Karen stated, I needed to be as accurate as possible. I calculated all the hours that Bob has joined us since January's 6-hour week, 18 weeks. and the total amount they owed was almost $2,000. In the group chat with Karen, Ken, and Henry, I said Karen stated that it was of utmost importance that I track the hours as accurately as possible, so I took it upon myself to double-check everything including the share hour. Thank goodness I did. I didn't realize we had forgotten to track all the hours that Bob joined us for soccer and music. Henry, I'm so sorry, Karen actually owes you quite a bit of money. If my calculations are correct, they owe acts to you and to me. Henry replied, Karen and Ken, I am so disappointed to hear that Miosaurus hasn't been compensated properly this entire time. I don't need my hours to be refunded for those hours because I wanted Steve to continue his playdates, but you need to pay Meow's Asaurus portion immediately. I got a huge chunk of money I wasn't expecting, and I am now on the hunt for my next nanny family. I'll be putting my 2 weeks' notice with Karen and Ken as soon as I do. Edit. Replace acronyms with fake names. Edit 2. I'm overwhelmed by all the support by you all. Thank you. I was afraid I was overstepping, but I'm glad I did it. Off to work now. Steve and I are going hiking today to look for different kinds of birds. Edit 3. Steve's grandparents spontaneously decided to take him out for the morning, so I have some free time. I told Henry about the post, and he's here now. He says, hi. So there we were, Donna and me, at this after-engagement party for Michael and his fiancée. Now, you got to know Michael's a buddy from way back, and even though I didn't really know the bride all that well, I figured, what the hell, let's celebrate love or whatever. The place was buzzing, and the music was so loud you could feel the bass in your bones. Donna and I were cutting loose on the dance floor, doing our thing. I noticed this woman, Karen, hanging around. She's related to the bride or something, distant cousin, I don't know. But the thing about Karen was she was eyeing me up like I was the last piece of pizza at a frat party. Donna caught on real quick. She's always been sharp like that. She shot me this look like, you seen this, and we had a little chuckle. But Karen wasn't taking the hint. She sidles up, drink in hand, and starts with the pickup lines. You know, she slurs in some cultures you can have 2 wives. Middle Eastern, right? I'm just staring at her, trying to figure out if she's serious or if the alcohol just hit her brain like a freight train. Lady, I'm happily married to one. 2 would be pushing it, I said, thinking that would be the end of it. But Karen, oh man, she was on a mission. She downs her drink like it's water, winks at me, and stumbles away. I'm thinking, okay, dodge that bullet and go back to dancing with Donna. Fast forward a bit, and Karen's had a few more rounds. She's a hot mess, knocking into people, slurring words like she's speaking a different language. At this point, it's hard to tell if she's hitting on me or just trying to stay upright. Then it happened. Out of nowhere, Karen turns into a human fountain of vomit, and guess who's in the splash zone? Yours truly. I'm standing there covered in God knows what, and Donna's jaw drops to the floor. What the F, lady? Get your crap together, Donna shouts over the music. Karen, instead of apologizing like any sane person, takes a swing at Donna. I'm not getting. She throws a punch, misses by a mile, and ends up face-planting on the dance floor. It was like a scene from a bad movie. Security swoops in like superheroes and drags Karen away, while Donna and I are standing there, still processing what the hell just happened. Michael and his fiancée rush over, looking all apologetic. Sorry, man, we had no idea Karen would go off the rails like that, Michael says. I'm trying to play it cool, like it's all good. No worries, dude. Just another chapter in the Book of Wild Parties. But inside I'm thinking, who invites Karen to anything ever again? Donna's in full-on protective mode. I can't believe that crazy woman just ruined your shirt, she exclaims, pointing at the vomit masterpiece. I look down at my shirt, which now has abstract art courtesy of Karen. Well, there goes my favorite shirt, I mumble, trying to lighten the mood. We decide to shake it off, grab some drinks, and join the crowd. The night goes on and we're having a blast despite the Karen incident. I'm getting sympathetic pats on the back, free drinks from folks who witnessed the spectacle, and Donna's giving me this look like, we'll laugh about this later. Eventually, we find Michael and his fiancée again, and they're practically begging for forgiveness. Seriously, guys, we had no idea she'd pull a stunt like that. We'll make it up to you, promise. Michael says, looking genuinely remorseful. Donna, always the diplomat, waves it off. Water under the bridge. Just keep Karen away from us, and we're good. As the night winds down, we're on the dance floor again, laughing about the absurdity of it all. Donna leans in and says, imagine being so entitled that you throw up on someone and then throw a punt. Classic Karen move. And that's how we ended up with the tale of Karen, the party crasher who left her mark, quite literally, on what was supposed to be a chill engagement celebration. Life's funny, man. You never know when someone's going to go full Karen on you. But hey, at least I got a good story out of it, and a ruined shirt as a souvenir. Cheers to wild parties and the characters who make them unforgettable. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. Years ago, I had a job that I loved, but it was a dead end, so I decided to change job. But before that, I met this older woman. She was in her late 30s, early 40s, and I was on my mid-20s, who worked on the same building, but for a different employer. She seemed pretty cool. We used to hang out when we could, and she said she'd love to work with me someday. Then she got fired, and we stopped talking, but just for timing. She had told me all her previous jobs had ended badly, but he also explained why it was always unfair. I was young and admired her, so I believed her. I even helped her get her stuff back, because when she got fired, it was on bad terms and she wouldn't be allowed in the building anymore, but I never got the details of that. I found another job after that, then got another at the same time and lived my life quite happily. COVID hit and I lost one of my jobs. I found a very low-paying one and started to get desperate for money. I remembered my friend from back then and thought she could give me some advice and moral support. I never thought she would offer me a job because of her history, but she did. Not super well paid, but better than my other second job, so I did the math, and with those two salaries I'd be fine again, and I quit the low-paying job. She is the president of a nonprofit foundation with a business partner, and I was going to be the third person on the team. The day I started the new position with her, she told me she did her math wrong. She could only pay me a very low amount. Lower than my previous job, almost minimum wage. She also never hired me, so she never paid for Social Security at all. In my country, your employer adds an amount towards that. So I was stuck there really struggling with money, but at least the job was super fun, challenging, and I was working with a friend, so that was good. She paid my salary on time the first 2 months. Then every end of the month, she would start crying, literally, about her own financial status, how she had no money at all, and she could only pay me a part of it now, and the rest later. She did that, but still not the ideal situation. The rest of the month, she would have her nails done, go to expensive parties, go out on vacations, lend money to her business partner who had a drug problem, etc. Things started to get worse every month, but I never thought a friend would screw me over on purpose. Until then, I felt sorry for her. How silly of me. She had started to use money from her family-in-law without them knowing, and they started to get suspicious. I think that's how she managed to pay me, but she never said with all the words, just vague implications. We were working on a project for the government, and after the first delivery, the government said there were many errors in our proposal. We checked, and it was all on the things she had done, but she yelled and blamed it on me. That's when it clicked in my head. My part wasn't even relevant for that part of the process yet. I asked her to stop yelling at me and to please explain what she needed from me, because she wasn't being clear and I wasn't the one in charge of the faulty parts, so I wasn't sure of how to fix that. She just started to yell even more, now saying she had a friend in my same field check my work and it was incomplete. It really was, because I needed her part to finish mine and she would keep changing it. That was a Friday, so I told her I was going to keep working from home. We could talk on Monday. Monday came and I went to the office. She wasn't there. I tried calling her and no response. I texted her that we needed to talk before I started working, but she replied she was at the ministry, which I knew was impossible for a number of reasons. I told her I quit, and I was taking all social media accounts' passwords with me until she paid me my full salary. The week before, she was crying about not having money, but this time I got the money right away, so I gave her the passwords. And that's how I learned that just because someone is your friend, that doesn't mean it's a good idea to let the important things go. My aunt was one of 2 kids my grandparents had. My mother was the polar opposite to my aunt. She worked from the age of 12 in my grandfather's shop, never asked for anything, and eventually managed to start her own business. My aunt never held down a job till the age of 26, was constantly stealing from her parents, and was constantly in trouble. Despite this, my aunt was spoiled by my grandmother, and so were her kids. She had 3 kids from 3 different men, and her first husband was not one of them, if you know what I mean. Didn't matter what my aunt or her kids did, my grandmother would always jump to their defense. She never had time for my mom and her kids unless it was to get something from us. The only reason my mom would visit her was because she loved my grandfather. My grandfather passed away in 2004, and a few months after my nan decided to write up a new will. My mother and my aunt were both present for it when she signed it, so they knew what was in it. It made it so that when she passed away, her home would be sold and the money split 25% each to my mom and aunt, and the remaining 50% would go evenly to the grandkid. At the time, the home was worth more than $500,000, so it would be a nice little inheritance, but nothing life-changing. In 2010, my mom died after an accident and did not have a current will in place. As she no longer had her business and was renting a house, she didn't have anything of much monetary value. The only thing she was concerned about was what would be done at her funeral should she have passed away, but had told me everything she wanted. The music, the flowers, the coffin color, and even what people were to wear at the funeral. She wanted people to wear bright, warm colors. So when she passed, my aunt and nan took over all the arrangement and tried to undo all the things I'd told them. The songs were going to be songs I knew Mom didn't like. The flowers were all the wrong colors, and they picked a hideous coffin. With the help of my siblings, we were able to change a few of the things back to what they were supposed to be. But the coffin couldn't be changes for some reason, and my nan refused to let people come dressed as clowns, so it was all black. It was frustrating. After the funeral, my nan had her will changed. My siblings and I were told by our aunt that she didn't have any involvement with the writing of the will, and our nan told us that she changed it so that Mom's share would go to her kids instead. All good, we thought. After Mom passed away, my nan just stopped talking about my mom. At first, we thought it was because she was still recovering from losing her daughter, but even 5 years after Mom passed, she still wouldn't talk about her. Even if you brought up a story about Mom, Nan would very obviously try and change the subject, usually about how hard my aunt and her crappy kids had it. And if you went to talk to her about your own problems, she would somehow bring it back to my aunt. I had suffered a mental breakdown after my mom's death, so you can imagine how much it hurt to hear, well, X has had it so much worse. In 2016, my nan passed away. She had written down what she wanted to be done for her funeral, and it was basically all the same things she had picked out for my mom's funeral, even the music to be played. I don't know why she tried to have a dress rehearsal funeral using my mom as the stand-in, but it was obvious that's what she was trying to do. So after a couple of months, our siblings and I were waiting to hear about the will reading, and my aunt kept telling me, "Oh, it'll be another month before we can do the reading." I didn't mind. I wasn't fussed about the money, to be honest. But my oldest brother was hoping to use the money to pay for a honeymoon for him and his then-fiancée, and my younger brother was about to start uni, so it would be a hell of a help. Eventually, my dad bumped into the solicitor my grandmother had used to deal with her will and asked what was happening. The solicitor let slip that the will had already been read and that it left everything to my aunt. When my dad questioned this, the solicitor told him that my aunt had been present when the will was written, despite promising that she had nothing to do with it. When confronted, my aunt initially tried to deny but eventually admitted to lying to all of us. She showed us the will, and it confirmed what we already knew. The house and all its contents were now my aunt's. This included my granddad's war medals. He fought in the Second World War. When I told her that he had promised them to me before he died, she said, "Well, unless you have it in writing, you will have nothing in this house." Anyway, I already given to Clive. My heart sank. Clive, not his real name Ovs, was her eldest son and the dictionary definition of AF up. He'd been in and out of prison for stealing and dealing drugs. I knew that the moment that prick had got his hands on my granddad's medals, they would have been sold off. We looked into taking her to court over the will, but everyone we spoke to said that we probably wouldn't get anything out of it. She immediately put the house up for sale at close to $750,000. She had pissed off too many people in our town, so she was going to sell the house and move closer to her daughter, who lives in a big city. An offer was made on the house, and she put down a deposit on a house near the big city. And I thought that was that. Here's where karma comes into play. The people who wanted my Nan's house had a survey done on the house to see if there were issues. And oh boy, were there. Turns out that the land the house was built on way too soft for the type of house it was, and it was sinking. It has sunk about 2 centimeters in the 40 years my Nan and Granddad had lived there, but the sinking was accelerating to 1 centimeter per year. This meant that within the next 3 years, the house would need some serious work or be knocked down. The new value of the house, $60,000. The buyers immediately pulled out, having not even put down a deposit. She couldn't buy her new house, but still had paid the deposit on it. And while this was happening, she let Clive move in with her into her house that she rented from the council. He wasn't allowed to live in any of the council houses because he had trashed every single one he'd ever been given. Someone reported this and she was kicked out of her home. She was forced to move into my Nan's old home as she couldn't live anywhere else. So there she is, living in a crumbling house with her craphead son and her partner. She was stuck there for 2 years. Every time I saw her, she would try and start talking to me, and I would just ignore her and walk off. One time as I was walking away, she screamed, "Your mother deserved to die for having AR word like you," in the middle of a busy street. Someone reported her to the police, and she had an official warning from them and was ridiculed on Facebook. Every time I saw her after that, she looked more and more miserable. Eventually, she sold the house for something like $85,000 and moved in with her daughter in the big city. I lost contact with her and her kids after this. I thought karma had been issued. Oh, but karma still wasn't done with her. I bumped into one of her former friends and she told me what happened after she left our town. She moved into her daughter's home. Let's call her Sue, but they only had a 3-bedroom house and 3 kids. My aunt and her partner had to live in the smallest room in the house while my aunt looked for a job and a home to rent. Even with $85,000, she couldn't afford a home anywhere. After about a month, my aunt's partner ran off after emptying her account. She was left stranded in Sue's house, not contributing anything because all the money she makes goes into bingo. Eventually, Sue and my aunt get into a screaming match, and my aunt said something along the lines of, "I should have aborted you." Sue immediately kicked her out of her house. So, again, there's my aunt, in a city where she knows nobody, no money, no home, and the last bridge she had a smoldering wreck. Last anyone has heard, she was living in a caravan in the roughest part of the city, and she can no longer work because she's suffering early onset arthritis and can no longer move her hands. I know I shouldn't get joy out of something like this happening to another person, but it does bring me some peace as to what happened. Update. Hello all. Around a year ago, I told all of you about my aunt stealing my and my sibling inheritance, and I thought I'd make a quick update. But I wanted to answer and correct a few things. I have tried to find my grandfather's war medals, but because I do not have his service number or his death certificate, I can't even get access to his records. After I found out my cousin had taken and sold the medals, I did search local stores and Facebook groups looking for info, but no luck. I know he hadn't won any major medals. He was a mechanic and driver in the Royal Army, so thankfully had a rather uneventful war, so it would have just been the campaign and service medals. Someone did ask for specifics about the signing of the will, pointing out that my aunt couldn't have been witness to the signing of the will due to laws preventing it. I don't know the full specifics of what her and my Nan had done, but her solicitor did let slip that my aunt had known what was in the will before it was written. I just don't know the full detail. I'm ignorant when it comes to solicitors and the such, and it was my eldest sister who read the will in full and relayed it to the rest of us. We did ask if there was anything we could fight it, but everyone we talked to said there wasn't any case. Sorry if that was confusing. 3. I have seen a few comments on Reddit and on YouTube videos. Super weird scene in the wild, by the way, using she/her to describe me. Well, I guess that's why now people on here give their age and gender at the start of these stories, because I'm a man, 32 male in case you were wondering. I wasn't annoyed or upset about it, I just thought it was funny. 4. Someone asked what a caravan is. They're what we call travel trailers in the UK. Think of a fiberglass aluminum box on wheels. People in the UK use them for short holidays, and they're not fun to live in for an extended period of time. I have experience of this, and it sucked. Anyway, on to the update. So when I last left off, my aunt had been left abandoned in a big city and stuck in a caravan with crippling arthritis. Well, a few weeks after my first post, I'd gotten news that she had somehow found a new beat. How, I don't know, because my aunt had the look and build of an obese pug, and that was when she was in her 30s. So what she looks like now in her mid-60s doesn't bear thinking about. Well, her and her new boy toy, I think I just threw up a little. Decided to move to a seaside town and start a new life. Well, you can guess what happened. Boy toy must have gotten sick of her or found out she had no money, so abandoned her. During an argument with her landlord, she suffered a heart attack. And while in hospital, she suffered another. She has recovered but was even more disabled than she was before. She's been given a home by her local council. But it's okay, guys, because Clive has come to live with her. Oh my God, Clive, the F-up who sold my grandfather's metals and lost my aunt her home. The man is a walking episode of Jeremy Kyle. After my aunt left my hometown, things started to look up for Clive. Someone took pity on him and gave him a job as a laborer, and for a few months he was doing well. Looking clean and well despite everything that had happened, I was glad he was getting his life back on track. Well, it turns out not. He was given a work van to go from job to job, and one day came to work with a black eye and no van. He told everyone that he'd been carjacked and the van stolen. Sadly, for Clive, they found the van, and a very confused man wondering why the police were arresting him. After questioning and a text exchange, they found out that Clive had sold the van to the man and gave himself a black eye to make it look like a theft. Clive was arrested. He was massively lucky because his boss didn't press charges. The boss told me later that he only did it out of respect of my grandfather, and all the police did was fine for wasting police time. After burning through all the money he had, he was again homeless. His only lifeline was his younger brother. Let's call him Colin. Colin was in the armed forces, and a pretty high rank from what I've heard. Colin was away from home most of the time on deployment, but had managed to buy a nice home in our town. He let Clive live in his house on the agreement that he'd pay part of the mortgage. You know where this is going. He stopped paying, stopped maintaining the house, and treated it like a drugs den. Colin asked him to leave, but Clive used squatters' rights to prevent removal. Because Colin was overseas, he couldn't come back and sort it out and kick him out in person, and had no one in the area to wait for Clive to leave and change the locks behind him. So Clive lived in the house for 6 months. That was until a pissed-off father broke in and beat the crap out of Clive. You see, the father had found out that Clive, who is 41 by way, had been sexting and selling weed to a 13-year-old girl. After that, Clive abandoned the house and ran off to Mummy. From what I've heard, Colin had stripped the house and is selling it to move closer to his base. We found most of this out from my aunt's daughter, Sue, the one who kicked my aunt out. You see, my brother was on holiday in Turkey and just so happened to be in the hotel room next to Sue. She was very apologetic to my brother and thought we might like to know what had happened. She seems to have a nice life and family and no longer lives in the house she shared with her mum. I am generally happy for her, although I don't think I will try to mend our relationship. Sue had said some spiteful things to me in particular and had never reached out to apologize. I might still feel a little bit bitter for that. As for my aunt, I don't know how to feel. I do hope she gets better and grows enough of a spine to kick Clive out, as it will only lead her to more trouble. In some ways, I do wish I could rebuild a relationship with her. She is the last living link to my grandfather and grandmother, as well as my mother's only living sibling. But I know I could never trust her. Never not see that face and the spitefulness that she had for me and my family. That she chose money, or what she thought was money, over us. And I don't think I can forgive that. But I'm not going to go out of my way to do her more harm. I'm just happy that I'm in a better place now. So where I work, we deal in phone plans, Wi-Fi plans, and also phone accessories. We are sent communications to say to mark an accessory up $5 or so. Example: high-end C-Critter name-based phone cases usually scan in at $30-$35, but we price at $35-$40. In this instance, it was a pair of semi-high-end earphones at $20 that scanned at like $13, but we don't have an $18 thing, and it looks super out of place if we made one because everything is at multiples of 5. Very satisfying. So we do extra discount for nice people on these earphones. Now, onto the actual story. So I was doing a solo shift. 9-6. Mana comes in clearly having trouble with his phone, so I get down to helping him, a matter that would take roughly 5 minutes. Nothing extravagantly long about that, right? Well, about 2 minutes in, Man B strolls in, and he sees me with a "so goes to look at our wall of accessories" after spinning the name brand cases stand around. About a minute into helping A, I see B getting antsy. He's tugging at the earphones he wants and looking at me expecting me to either duplicate myself and help him or abandon another customer, neither of which would look good. A minute more passes and he's starting to wave and snap his fingers and start tapping me. Mana snaps at B to wait his turn and compares his child to him, saying that even the 5-year-old has enough manners to wait his turn. I finish with A and go get the earphones with B, who acts like I'm stupid and starts saying stuff like, "Are you sure you should be working here?" And "Do these have a mic on them?" even though the mic is depicted in the picture of the earphones on the box. So I scan them, and it pops up as 12.99. On the wall, they're at 19.99. We round up by the cent because Ireland doesn't deal in 1 or 2 cents anymore. So I mark it up to that advertised 20. If he'd waited his turn and spoke nicely, I'd have put it down as the scan price. But no, he decided to be a jerk, so I decided to put the tax on his earphones. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.